Assalamualaikum and good afternoon everyone. Welcome to our forum today. For today we are going to comment on a pretty hot topic which is sexual harassment in a workplace. Before that, let me introduce myself first. I am Hana and I will be the moderator for today. Nowadays, harassment is one of the most common cases that always occurs in our society. When someone gets sexually harassed, this will significantly affect their life by leaving them a traumatic experience that they won't be able to forget and may ruin their future. Before we get through to our forum, allow me to introduce to all of our panel. Our first panel is a journalist, Ms. Fatihah from Institute of Journalism Malaysia. Second panel is Dr. Nur Rahani from psychologist from Jiwa Kasih Hospital. Third panel is the Workers Officer of YG Company, Mr. Irfan Naufal. And Mrs. Ashura, also Workers Officer from YG Company as a fourth panel. Our fifth panel is Mr. Hakimi from the Police Sexual Crime Division from Bukit Tinggi Police Officer. Next, Ms. Asma, a motivator from ELF Company. And our last panel is Mr. Yani, a president from the Malaysia Employers Federation. Thank you for attending today's forum. Without wasting our time, my first question to our first panel, Ms. Fatihah, can you explain what is sexual harassment? What is your opinion about sexual harassment?
Thank you, Ms. Moderator, Ms. Hana. In Malaysia, sexual harassment as defined by the Employment Act 1955 is any unwanted conduct of social nature, whether verbal, visual, gestural, or physical, directed at a person who is offensive, humiliating, or a threat to their well-being. The Act does not distinguish between male and female, or employer and employee. As such, sexual harassment can be committed by a female against a male, or an employee against an employer. In my view as a journalist, awareness of sexual harassment should be occurred in everyone, especially among employees. Before this, the Institute of Journalists (IOJ) have been doing interviews with victims that experience that of them. So, we as a journalists want to raise awareness in them and show that they are not alone, and we can help them so they can have a safe workplace. We publish the information with permission to encourage other victims to gain courage to speak and do not take it light.
Thank you, Ms. Fatihah, for the explanation just now. Based on the topic we are discussing today, can any of you share your opinion? Why is it always women to be sexual harassed?
Can I give my opinion?
Yes, Mr. Ashura.
Thank you, Ms. Hana. Okay, sexual harassment always happen to women because people always say that woman weak, timid, and always say that it is their fault when this happen. We, as a woman worker lack in power, in insecure position, and lack of confidence. Sometimes when we have courage to tell people to help us, but they laugh it as a joke or say it is because of our fault. When they say that, we think there are no more help because they do not understand. Let me give examples of sexual harassment most women get. First, they make sexual remarks on our body. Second, make sexual jokes or tell us stories. Third, they start staring and displaying sexual suggestive visual. Next, standing close and touching our clothes and body.
Okay, Mr. Ashura, thank you for the opinion. So, based on what Mr. Ashura, women always be their target because they think woman is weak and all of this happen because of the woman itself. I want to hear from Mr. Irfan. What is your comment?
Thank you for giving me to explain this. First of all, I want to say, yes, women are weak. Therefore, we as a man need to protect them, not to take advantage. For those who said this is all because of a woman itself, it is not 100% their fault. If we as a man can control and be respectful. My point is, maybe both are wrong, not only one side. I have a question for Mr. Hakimi. Since the cases about sexual harassment in workplace cannot be controlled and some of them not speak up, Do you have a way to share so the victims know what to do if this happen in the workplace?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Irfan. That was a good question. If this happens, do not be afraid and embrace, and they must find a way to speak out. Tell the story to someone who will understand, like your sister, mother, or call a hotline. Then document every incident in detail and keep all the evidence. Keep a log that includes the date, time, location, and description of each incident of harassment. If the place has CCTV, it is better to get a clip for strong evidence. In addition, do not choose to expose it to the media. Otherwise, it may cause trouble for themselves, you may be sued for infringement on reputation or even suspected framework. Next, just go report to the police. If sexual harassment violates the Public Security Administration law, the victim can apply to the police for administrative penalties to the violator, including fine and detention. If sexual harassment constitutes a crime such as a compulsory decency of woman, rape or willful and malicious injury, the victim need to report to the local police in a timely manner so as to investigate the criminal responsibility in accordance with law. There is more, but there is a few simple steps that I give.
That was full of explanation, Mr. Hakimi. Thank you so much. So there was a way to stop this. If the victim outside take important of this, we can stop sexual harassment to be happen because sure they will do not want to be in a jail or their reputation going down, right? Okay, so let's go to the next panel. Miss Yani. Sorry, Mrs. Yani. Our government already have the existing law, but do we need a new law for sexual harassment?
Thank you, Mrs. Hannah. We had to meet to discuss the proposed bill with the Ministry of Women, Family, and we felt that there were still many outstanding issues that needed to be resolved. There are already provisions under the Penal Code, Employment and Civil law, as well as tortious claim against any acts of sexual harassment. From the perspective of private sector employers, the Employment Act 1955, the Occupational Safety and Health Act 1994, and Section 20 of the Industrial Relations Act 1967 strongly govern any act of sexual harassment at the workplace. It is also common for employers to have their own policies and mechanisms to handle complaints of sexual harassment at the workplace, as no employer would condone such acts. We are pleased to be able to engage with the relevant ministries to raise our concerns before the proposed bill is tabled in Parliament. As MEF, we view sexual harassment as a very serious misconduct and it applies to both women and men and between opposite or similar gender too. And we continually advise and train our members on how to address such issues at the workplace, which is well managed in the working environment. MEF is of the position that there is no objective for the proposed bill to be tabled in Parliament, considering that there are already adequate laws and provision to address sexual harassment at the workplace. We are also concerned by the proposal to set up a specific tribunal for complaints on sexual harassment at the company's internal process, maybe by past, and such scenario could seriously disrupt industrial harmony and must be avoided.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yani, for the explanation. The existing law already strong to support victims, so whenever they feel harassed, they can just report it. Also follow the step Mr. Hakimi said just now. Okay, then we go back to the topic. I want to ask Mistress Asma, why people not take it serious and just let it go?
Thank you, Mistress Hannah. People often confuse of the term sexual harassment, like they don't really understand how a simple jokes or touch also called as sexual harassment. Let me give some example. Imagine that you as a woman or a man recently met someone around your age whom you feel strongly attracted to. When you have a date, you saw how him or her look at you intensely while you were coming closer to them. Then, when you are in front of them, they give comments how sexy you look in your outfit and hug you. Now, imagine the exact same behavior performed by your boss, male or female boss, either one, at work. Whereas you are likely to find the former situation extremely pleasant and exciting. You will probably find the later episode stressful, offensive, and potentially threatening. The key features that distinguish harassing from no-harassing conduct in no any specific behavior, but the fact that it is unwelcome, not reciprocate, and considered inappropriate according to shared societal standards. In fact, practically all legal definitions include unwantedness as one of the main criteria for defining sexual harassment.
I see. Then, can you give some suggestion as a motivator on how to prevent this to be happening? You can give them some motivation.
In this case, we first present prevalence estimates of sexual harassment, followed by a review of different forms of sexual harassment. We then analyze who is at risk of becoming a victim of harassment and who is likely to become a perpetrator, followed by a discussion of the consequence arising for the victim and for the institution in which the harassment occurs. Subsequently, we focus more in depth on the harasser and analyze different motivations that may drive harassing behaviors. Finally, we consider situational variables that facilitate or inhibit harassment and discuss intervention strategies aimed at preventing harassment within organizations.
Good explanation, and I hope people out there will take note about this. We do not have so much time. Our panel have been hearing our discussion from start. Then I give it to the Dr. Norahani, a psychologist, to wrap this topic. What about your view as a psychologist, doctor?
Thank you, Mr. Sana. From my view as a psychologist and someone who has learned how to read body language is that sexual harassment are indeed a forced type of affection where the other party are not happy with the interaction. The term sexual harassment encompasses a variety of behaviors that can vary considerably in severity. In psychological research, sexual harassment is typically divided according to one of two broad classification systems. One of them would be quid pro quo. This term refers to situation in which an individual who holds power provide advantage or withhold disadvantage in exchange for sexual favors. This kind of harassment requires a status hierarchy and is typically exerted by higher status males who have institutional power over lower status females. The latter form of harassment does not require a power differential and indeed is often displayed by co-workers of approximately equal status, called as hostile environment harassment. Hostile environment harassment includes behaviors such as telling sexual jokes, making sexual gestures, or unprofessional sexist remarks. Uninvited touching or anything of which can create an intimidating, offensive, or hostile work environment.
Doctor, do you have more words to say?
Yes, this is important to know. For your information, sexual harassment manifests itself in different forms. Some examples are verbal harassment. This happens when two male co-workers are constantly teasing with dirty jokes. Physical harassment is like give lady clerk a pat on the shoulder, and the action become more, which is resting his hands on hers, putting his arm around her shoulder, and occasionally brushing against her accidentally. Then, a male co-worker has picture of scantily clad woman in suggestive poses placed prominently in his work area. Not when the pictures are indecent and obscene. This is visual harassment. Next, a male co-worker or superior has shown interest in female co-workers, but she is not keen on accepting his dates and have openly and clearly made known her distress and disapproval. Yet he persists, showering off his affection by leaving flowers on her desk or even making hidden threats. This is called as psychological harassment. I think that's all, Mistress Hannah.
Wow, that's impressive. Thank you, Doctor, for giving this information. After we heard all of the explanation from our panel today, it is very important to know what is sexual harassment, what type of sexual harassment, and how to prevent or report. As a victims, they cannot be scared but need to speak out so that this kind of sexual acts never happen again. It can bring stress and depression for those victims. Our forum has come to an end, but before that, I would like to thank for all 7 of our panelists today who are willing to spend their time together talk about these issues. See you again in the next session. Thank you very much.